kidding me? Number one, Paul is a highly educated Jewish rabbi, and number two, even the way he puts this paragraph together indicates his rhetorical skill. Right? Paul knows how to write, he knows how to read, he knows how to argue, and he uses, and this is what I teach my preaching students, he uses every device at his disposal to get the message across. We were talking in preaching class the other day. A lot of people are, down on preaching, and somebody says, well, I just don't see how one man giving a speech to the congregation does anything. In the New Testament, I see people talking back and forth and interacting, and I see the prophets doing symbolic actions. And I said, yeah, so what's your point? Why can't your preaching do that? I'm sorry if your preaching's boring. How many times do we have a conversation from the pulpit? How many times do I at least start off the sermon by saying, join me in this conversation, right? I'll use video clips, I'll use songs, I'll use whatever I have to use to get you involved in the moment, in the message, right? That's what Paul does too. And Paul, not only does he know how to argue, Romans is one of his most coherent, logical arguments. Philemon. Have you ever read Philemon? Paul comes across as kind of I can't say that out loud in church. Oh, I can, my mother's not here. Butt kisser. Have you ever read Philemon? I'm Paul, an old man in chains for the gospel. Please, Philemon, do what I beg you to do. I won't even bring up that you owe me your own life, but whatever. Read it sometime. I got to show you at least one more. Galatians 5. My mother gets on to me all the time. Sometimes she makes appointments with me through my secretary. When she does that, I know I'm in trouble. This is not just a normal conversation. And I try to listen. I remember when I preached through Hosea, the ESV has a consistent translational approach to the book of Hosea. And that is, they always translate that word as whore. And in chapters 4 and 5, the word whore appears 22 times. And that makes my mother uncomfortable. And I know it does some of you too, but I don't care, it's in the Bible. And so she made an appointment with me, and my preacher would have never said the word whore. And I said, well, the ESV is a newer translation. And I turned it around and I showed it to her. Okay, that being said, this is even worse than that. In Galatians 5, Paul is doing battle with the Judaizers. Okay? A Judaizing teacher is a teacher who is a Jew who believes that in order to be a good Christian, you've got to be a good Jew, which means you've got to stay kosher, you got to keep the food laws, you got to keep the Sabbath laws, and you have to be circumcised. And Paul is dealing with this in Romans and Galatians, but in Galatians, he just finally has enough. In verse 6 of chapter 5, he says, for in Christ Jesus, neither circumcision nor uncircumcision counts for anything, but only faith working through love. You were running well. Who hindered you from obeying the truth? This persuasion is not from him who calls you. And beware, because a little leaven leavens the whole lump. I have confidence in the Lord that you will take no other view than mine. And the one who is troubling you will bear the penalty, whoever he is. But if I, brothers, still preach circumcision, why am I still being persecuted? In that case, the offense of the cross has been removed. Now here it is, verse 12. I wish those who unsettle you would emasculate themselves. Anybody have a different translation they'd like to share? What's the message say right there? Bob, what does your translation say?
Wish everyone who was upsetting you would not only get circumcised, but would cut off much more.
You got one of them new weird translations. What is that, the Common English Version? Is that what you said it was? The Contemporary English Version? I wish you'd not just get circumcised. I wish you'd cut off all of it. I wish the next time you did circumcision, you lop the whole thing off. That doesn't read like the Bible, does it? What does the King James say right there? Anybody got it? See, now that's a totally different idea. I wish they would cut themselves off. Wow, which one of those translations is right?
And the Message uses castrate.
Castrate. There are some translations of the Bible that in order to clean things up and make them more acceptable to a puritanical audience, I'm sorry, I had to tell it like it is. They sort of hide what's actually going on. I think in this case, the King James has done that. I wish they'd cut themselves off. Remove yourself from the group. We don't want you to be a part of the group anymore. That's not what Paul says. And every other translation seems to acknowledge that. Now, that being said, don't get me wrong. In a lot of places, King James gets it right where other folks get it wrong, right? So, all translation is interpretation, all of it, okay? A translator has looked at that and has made a decision about how best to go with it. But the reason I'm showing this to you is to get you excited to read the Bible. There's more there than you thought. It's much more exciting than you thought. As I was talking about the prophets this week, I looked at all of the ways prophets communicate. Satire, parables and analogies and symbolic actions. Jeremiah is not content to just say, y'all are just spoiled. Jeremiah says, God told me to go to Walmart and buy a new pair of underwear and then go bury it under the Euphrates River. And then he told me to go dig it up and put it on. And I said, God, no. Maybe it's only me because I've got 100 children, but sometimes after we go swimming, they take off their swimming trunks and they put them in a plastic bag in the back end of the car and we forget them there. And then you wonder what that smell is and then you find it. Oh, that's when we went swimming last month, right? Well, that's what Jeremiah experienced. God says to Jeremiah, I want you to go Walmart, buy a new pair of BVDs and take them and bury them in the river. And then a couple weeks later, go back and put them on. Jeremiah pulls them out. They're disgusting. It's molded. There's worms crawling. I'm not going to put it on. And God says, that's right. And Israel and Judah were to me as close and intimate as a brand new pair of tighty-whities, but they have become so spoiled, I will take them off and throw them away. Imagery, emotion, and a little bit of political incorrectness. Now that sounds like a book I'd like to read. All right? I'll see you next week.